Okay, this will be my last chapter for today. Um, and I'll be online probably this afternoon. So you can check in any of these posts. You can ask questions. Um, you can check in on my daily check-in, or you can send me an email. I do want to hear from all of you, though. I just want to make sure you're doing okay during this time. If you need me to call you, just so you have someone to talk to, let me know. Give me a number. I'll give you a call. So now we're going to read 2 letters from Kansas. She's going to meet her husband in this chapter. I stayed in the cabin a long time by myself. Then me and Joe Pittman started seeing each other. Joe Pittman had been married, but his wife was dead and left him with two children, 2 girls. We had known each other a long time before Ned left for Kansas, but we never looked at each other like we was interested. I had 2 reasons. One, Ned was by himself in this world, except for me, and I didn't want no man and no children splitting him just because he was an orphan. Or, sorry, spiting him just because he was an orphan. The second reason, I never looked at a man. I was barren. So, barren is a phrase that a woman uses, that a doctor uses to tell a woman that she cannot have any children. So, for one reason or another, and it was probably common in slavery times, women who had been beaten by their masters um, risked being barren. And Jane was very small for her size, and they also attributed her size to the reason why she was also barren. So those were 2 reasons. So one, because of Ned, because she loved her Ned, and 2, because she was barren. An old woman at the place had told me that. I went to her one day, told her how my body acted and didn't act. After we had sat down and talked a while, she said one word, barren. Hold on one second. He told me it had happened when I was nothing but a tot. Oh, wait, barren. I went to a doctor and he told me the same thing. You barren, all right. He told me it had happened when I was nothing but a tot. Said I'd got hit or whipped in a way that had hurt me inside. So this might be one reason I didn't grow much either. Asked me how my appetite was. I said, appetite? My appetite is as good as anybody else's appetite, he said. You all right, go on back home. When Joe Pittman asked me to be his wife, I told him I wanted to think about it a while because I didn't want to tell him I was barren. I liked him now, and I was scared if I told him I was barren, he would leave me for somebody else. He asked me again, and I told him I wanted to think some more. He kept on asking me, and that's when I told him. We were sitting down in the house that day eating when I told him that. I told him if he didn't want me no more, that was all right. I would understand. But all he said was, and this is important, okay? Ain't we all been hurt by slavery? If you just say you'll help me raise my 2 girls, I'll be satisfied. He was a real man, Joe Pittman. So just the piece, we'd all been hurt by slavery. So think about that. That's pretty powerful. We didn't get married. We didn't believe in the church, and Joe never did. We just agreed to live together, like people did in slavery time. Slaves didn't get married in churches. They jumped over the broom handle. Old mistress and young mistress held the broom handle up off the floor, and old master told slaves to hold hands and jump over it. If they was old people, old mistress and young mistress would hold the broom down low, and the old couple would step over sprightly. Old master would say, step sprightly there, Jubal. Step sprightly there, Minnie. They would step sprightly, and they were pronounced husband and wife. Me and Joe Pittman didn't think we needed the broom. We wasn't slaves no more. We would just live together long as we wanted each other. That was all. Not long after we started living together, Joe told me he wanted to leave Colonel Dye's plantation. Joe was sharp with horses, and he was sure he could find a place where he could get more money and get better treatment than he was getting there. I told him if he wanted to leave, I would go with him. but I didn't want to leave till I heard from Ned. It was almost a year, and I still hadn't gotten a word from Ned. I didn't want him to come back and I wasn't there, or him to write me a letter and I didn't get it. Joe said he would wait till I heard, but at the same time, he would look around for a new place. Every chance he got, he went out looking. If he had heard of a place, no matter how far it was, he would get there and get back before he had to go in the field. He went and checked it out. Page 82. Ned wrote me a month after he left home. So let me correct this. Ned wrote to Jane a month after Ned left home, okay? But I didn't get that letter for a year. He wrote the letter to somebody he met in New Orleans just before he got on the boat for Kansas. He didn't want to send the letter directly to me because the people here would have been suspicious. Anything that had Kansas or the North on it might have been torn up and thrown away. He sent the letter to his friend, and his friend was supposed to send it to the preacher on the plantation. And the preacher was supposed to read it to me. Instead of his friend sending the letter on to the preacher like he was supposed to do, he put the letter somewhere and forgot. When he found it again, he could hardly read the address, and he sent it to the wrong place. When he came back, he had to get in touch with Ned in Kansas again. Ned was in Leavenworth when he first wrote the letter, but now he had gone to a place called Atchison. It was a year before everything got straightened out. The letter told how people was coming into Kansas by the boatload. At first, how the white people in Kansas was helping them, how they collected money to give them, how they organized committees to go to Washington and places like that for money and clothes, money and food. Even from across the sea, they got money and clothes. The people at first were almost too nice, but that was the first letter. When I got the second letter, things had changed already. The white people couldn't help all of them, and there wasn't any work for them to do. Now, the white people didn't want them in town. Ned was on the committee that found new places for people to live. He traveled by boat and down the river, but no matter where he went, there was already too many people. His committee sent letters back to the South. Not all the people to come to one place. There were other states where they could go and find comfort. But the people had heard of Kansas first. Like sheeps, they had to go where everybody else had gone. Now the riots. Kind of sounds like what's happening over here, right? Like all of a sudden everybody's going to the same supermarket and the lines are really long. And I have friends who keep saying, watch out, riots are next. When the letters and papers didn't keep them out, the white people drove them out with sticks and guns. When Ned went out in the country to see how they was living, he said some of them had died from the cold. Others was starving. Some was talking about coming back south, but most of them was going farther west or head north. The only good news I got from Ned at this time, he was working for some white people who liked him. They saw how much he cared for his race, and they thought he could help them much more if he finished school. He told them he wanted to go on to school, but he thought he ought to help me. From the first letter on, he always sent me $3 or $4 every time he wrote. When I got the first money, I wrote back and told him I didn't need it. I was making out just fine. He told me if I didn't need it, put it up, but keep it. He never told me he wanted to go back to school. He didn't tell me that till I wrote and told him me and Joe Pittman was married. We wasn't married, we was just living together, but Ned wouldn't have liked that. But it wasn't till after that I told him about me and Joe. He told me he wanted to go back to school. Ned was working on a farm in Kansas. He worked in the day. He rode a horse to school at night. This went on for 5 or 6 years. When he finished, they gave him a job teaching there. He stayed till the war started in Cuba. Then he joined the army. After the war, he came back here. He wanted to teach at home now. So now this is getting exciting because Ned went to school and now he's a teacher and he's going to come back to the plantation where Jane is and he's going to teach the children there. So some of the things that you could write about is lost communications, right? What happens when somebody sends us a letter and we don't get it for a while. You can talk about, why do you think he didn't tell her he went back to school? And why do you think she didn't tell him about Joe? I kind of feel like, I don't know, if I'm talking to my daughter and something like that exciting happened, I would tell her. And I would hope that she would tell me if she was going to school. So I kind of want to see what you think about that. Why do you think they withheld that information from each other? Have you ever had a time in your life when something really good was happening and you didn't tell your mom and dad? What happened when you eventually told them? Tell me, I want to read it. I want to find out. All right, our next chapter is another home. I think Jane's going to move.